you, Mayor. 4.1, release funds from 2023 restricted contingency account, Black Hands Universal. I'll read the results. Resolved that county council hereby releases an amount not to exceed $50,000 in funding for the 2023 restricted contingency account as written, and transfers those funds to account as written for the purposes of funding 2023 Black Hands Universal programming. Be it further resolved, will hereby authorizes the mayor on advice of the city attorney to execute the contract with Black Hands Universal.
Are you moving that?
Yes, I so.
Okay, and second, Jorge? Thank you. Comments, questions? Jorge?
Yeah, I appreciate the documentation that Harry sent over and Steve for making sure it got to council. However, I do believe there are a few more questions that we had discussed that we were hoping to get answers to. When we discussed this at city administration that we just haven't gotten yet. And I do want to see this money go to Black Hands Universal. I know that myself and others have concerns about unanswered questions, and so I think it might be beneficial. If we table this for more information until we have those answers to those questions, and then we can have a more confident vote on releasing those funds. So that's a formal motion, yes.
That's a motion to table. Is there a second? Chris, seconds? All those in favor of? Any discussion on the table? Would it be appropriate to bring this back to committee so that it can be discussed in committee and you can determine then if you have the answers to your questions?
I see my chair raising his.
Robert, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I don't think that'd be helpful, because we've sent our informational requests and we just haven't, received the full amount of, I think perhaps George can elaborate. He had a couple of questions as well. When we have some outstanding questions, I don't know that sending it to committee would be. I certainly wouldn't object to it, but I don't think it'd be productive because the request for information that exists is the same request that will exist at that meeting. And so tabling this until we receive that information, I think is, I don't want to speak for you, but I think
I think it'll be redundant. No disrespect or anything like that, but I feel like
we could accomplish whatever we were trying to accomplish or continue discussion as a body of council with that information, no different than if we did this in committee. In fact, it'd probably be a lot more smoother because we wouldn't have folks who from a different committee having to come to CA to sit in and have those questions and then have it come back to council. When we are just waiting on this piece of information, we could have this discussed at the next relevant council meeting when we have this information.
One question I had as well is, given the video and other information that's been provided, I think there are other questions that should be addressed. I mean, we as a city manage these licenses. I fully expect that our contractors would abide by the rules that we obligate our community to abide by. I think that is a part, presumably that should be a part of this process.
Yeah, can I just interject and ask if Controller Steve Thayer, do you have any additional information that may not have yet been provided, Council, or is it to City Administration?
I do not. What I gave you is what I was given, and I forwarded to both organizations the request for information, and so I am kind of just the coordinator of this. So that's all I was trying to do.
Thanks, you, George.
Thanks. Well, I actually think there would be advantages in taking this back to committee. For both these requests. Neither one, provided enough information for us to make a good decision moving forward, and we almost tabled it in committee. That would be my preference. I will say, having known Mr. Smith for over 30 years, I'm quite confident that his organization is not an anti-Semitic hate group.
Thank you, George. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have a motion. We're discussing the motion to table right now. Cynthia, did you have an additional comment on this issue?
I have a comment in general, but not on the motion.
Okay. So are we ready? Did anyone else have a comment? Are we ready?
Just to confirm that Harry is not in Zoom anywhere, right? Harry's not on Zoom right now, right?
Harry Smith.
Oh, I'm sorry, the proprietor of the organization, okay.
So it's still a motion to let go on to.
Yeah.
So the motion is to table. Could we have a vote?
Did we decide whether we're going, there's tabling?
That's the motion that's on it right now.
Okay, all right.
So, motion to table, all those in favor? Okay, table. That, one moment, that passes 9-0 to table. Sure, Cynthia, go ahead.
So I would like to request city administration, I have two requests. One is, with regards to the question that has been raised, hopefully there might be some background and the appropriateness of the city proceeding and entering into a contract with a proprietor that may or may not, I mean, maybe there should be some investigation into this. It's a violation of city regulations. The second request I would have is it might be incumbent on the city administration to put together a preset form of questions for any non-city organization coming to ask for city funds to engage in a contract for services, so that any applicant who comes forward can face a very transparent, very predictable, reasonable expectation of what they should be expected to provide. That would be a basis for council approval of funds. It could be perceived that we're moving the goalposts along the way without their direction in advance. And I don't know, I mean, this obviously was the mayor's budget. It wasn't council's budget that included this originally, but it would be, I know that the IURA has a very clear, detailed application process. Anybody who wants to apply for government, any applicant for government funds is expected to deliver particular information. A similar type of process, I think, would just ease all of us through this in the future.
The process question or point that you're making is one that we are looking at in terms of budget. And I would just point out that, yes, in our current structure, it is the mayor's budget. It is the mayor's budget that all council votes on. So we share some responsibility in all of this. So this has been tabled. I would also request that when this comes forward in the future, if it does, that in this instance, Harry Smith be invited to participate in the discussion.
He was, but
He was invited to be here tonight.
definitely see it, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. All right.
5.2, I'm sorry, 4.2. Release of contingency funds for Unbroken Promise Initiative, and again, I will read it. Resolve the common council hereby releases an amount not to exceed $50,000 in funding from the 2023 restricted contingency account as written, and transfers those funds to the account as written for the purposes of funding 2023 Unbroken Promise Initiative programming, and be it further resolved, common council hereby authorizes the mayor on advice of city attorney to execute the contract for Unbroken Promise Initiative. I so move.
Ducks in seconds. Right, ducks in seconds. Comments, questions? All right.
Thanks, Mayor. Want to just respond to George, your question from the previous item. You know, personally, I think that the funding applications from both organizations are qualitatively different. There are a couple of additional questions that I think we discussed having about operational issues. But the scope of work is extremely clear to me, and the budget allocation is very clear, especially given the context that, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the quarterly disbursements for this, you will still receive the relevant financial paperwork to reimburse those amounts.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And so with that being said, I am much more comfortable with this one, and I plan to support it.
George,
We forwarded questions to both Black Hands Universal and Unbroken Promises Initiative. They're simple, straightforward questions about how this money would be used. Harry Smith responded. I wouldn't say he responded in a complete manner. Unbroken Promises Initiative didn't respond at all. They basically ignored the questions. So I would say this request should be tabled as well.
is that a motion, George, to table?
Yes.
Is there a second? Jeff? Those questions, Robert, is your hand?
Just to be very grant writer about it, of the three questions we posed, only the second one directly relates to the scope of work that was submitted to us. I think they're very reasonable questions, but questions about their future plans for other activities that are outside of the scope that was submitted to us, as well as background data on their work. Again, I would love to have these information, but I think that they're not, maybe I need additional guidance on this, but my feeling is we as council are supposed to be assessing the validity of the scope of work that is proposed and not, because the city is putting up with goalposts. I don't think we drill into every organization that we work with on ancillary details, which is not to say that they're unimportant, but I think I'm trying to contain my assessment of this very narrowly scoped on what the proposed activities are.
George?
I don't think asking what the money will be used for is ancillary. Not that I know ancillary meaning.
Well, no, I mean, like I said, your second line was the one that said, could we get more detail on the proposed budgetary lines, right? That was, I was accepting, right? The other two questions I was saying were, trying to say ancillary.
That's part of my spiel.
I know.
They still didn't respond at all, right?
But they did not respond, and that seems extremely arrogant to me when you're asking for $50,000.
I wasn't sure I heard this, but I would just point out that we're not accepting comments from the public at this point. This is discussion and vote of council. Again,
My other colleague was in master's in history from them. There's a, there's a thing going on, but, so my understanding is, Unbroken Promises has done an after-school program in the past, but in this school year has not been conducting an after-school program. So I want to be clear in understanding that the application is to start an after-school program in the fall. Because I know, my understanding is that unless I'm corrected, that they're not doing it right now. Can somebody confirm?
What I can confirm is I talked to Jordan earlier and suggested he joins this evening.
So, Steve, do you know if,
Yeah, I don't.
Tabling is not,
George?
tabling is not denying the form. More information.
Yeah, and I would just add to what George says here, that it's about a relationship and ensuring that that relationship is responsive.
So there is a motion that has been seconded to table 4.2. Vote on the motion to table. All those in favor of tabling? Opposed? And that passes 8-1. Okay. So we will look for additional information. It would be very helpful to clearly articulate the information, and some will say that has been requested already. But to clearly communicate to both organizations, Black Hands Universal and Unbroken Promise Initiative, the questions that people would like answers to, and to strongly encourage the leaders of both organizations to attend. Tonight might be an exception, I don't know, because of the impact of weather, although it is possible for people to attend virtually as well.